For us, risk, the word risk is a part of our everyday language. And it often is not part of everyday language in most people, at least in the conscious realm, right? But there's a lot of things that we do that require the idea of risk. And I think risk is often seen in a fearful way or a negative connotation. And I think our hope is that we kind of turn it on end a little bit here and talk about risk in a more positive way. I mean, there are negatives to everything, but I think taking risk, there's great positives from taking risk. So we're here to talk about what risk really means. Not in theory, not on paper, but in the choices real people make when the stakes are real and the outcome isn't guaranteed. Risk shows up in silence, in urgency, in loyalty, in fear, in hope. It shapes what we build, what we protect, and what we're willing to fight for. It's not just personal, it's deeply connected. Every calculated risk leaves a mark, and the ripple it creates doesn't just touch one life, it echoes through families, businesses, and entire communities. This podcast is about those echoes, the ones that remind us that we're not alone in the decisions we make or the weight we carry.
Okay, we're rolling.
Super.
Great. So let's talk about why we're here. We are making a podcast.
Yeah, and I think this is a really cool thing that we've thought a lot about over the course of the last couple of years, and it's finally here. We're doing the first one today. We're excited.
Yeah. And I think when we talked about what we were wanting to achieve out of a podcast is not to talk about insurance, but about how risk really shows up in people's lives on a broader spectrum than that. And we don't really think about that. I never thought I'd be working in insurance, first of all, but like when I started working, I was like, what do you mean risk management? What do you mean like, oh, so like the safety guy, like OSHA, yeah, okay. But then you start to see it in everything after a while, and you don't really even know what you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think when we were kind of prepping for this podcast, I think the thing that struck me the most was that for us, risk, the word risk is a part of our everyday language. And it often is not part of everyday language in most people, at least in the conscious realm, right? But there's a lot of things that we do that require the idea of risk. And I think risk is often seen in a fearful way or a negative connotation. And I think our hope is that we kind of turn it on end a little bit here and talk about risk in a more positive way. I mean, there are negatives to everything, but I think taking risk, there's great positives from taking risk. So,
yeah.
What's been intriguing to me thinking about it over the last week as I prepped for this is how many different things in my life all involve risk, and how I also sometimes am more risky and sometimes less risky, and sometimes we get less risky with age, right? Like investing for retirement, right? They say be more aggressive when you're young. I thought about it today that I tend to be pretty risky in how I play golf.
yeah.
Because the ramifications aren't that bad. I tend to be very risk averse to accidents. I tend to be a little more risky in the health of my body, right? And then I spend some time thinking about all the things that I've watched in my life and how that really affected how I attacked risk or didn't attack it in each one of those areas.
Yeah. Well, and we talked a little bit prepping for this, and I can't remember which one of you made this comment, but like we take a risk the moment we take our first step. Like it's literally in our DNA. It's who we are as human beings. Yeah. From that moment forward, we're taking risks. And it's in every business. It's in what mom does when she puts a teenager behind the wheel, right? Like, how do we find connectivity in these choices? Because they're all, every choice you make is a risk, good or bad, and it can be both, right? And it's affecting not only yourself, but multiple other parameters. There's this ripple effect of every choice that every human being makes. I think that's kind of how we got to this whole name for the podcast, the Calculated Collective, right? each choice we make there's some calculation in that, and it collectively affects us as communities.
Well, I think so, but if everybody jumped off a bridge, I wouldn't.
I think risk is relative.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you think about risk as a whole, it's relative to the person who's there. It's relative to the experience. It's relative to what it is that they're doing. You talked about it earlier. I'll take a risky shot on the golf course because the stakes are lower, right? Yeah. And some people are just that way all the time, right? They do wild and crazy things that I might consider risky, like jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. Not going to do it.
Me
right?
neither.
It's kind of risky to me, right? So it is relative, and I think the idea that you approach it by your experience, but I think what we want to highlight out of this is like, don't be afraid to take risk. Right. I mean, I think that's some of what we're talking about here, and there's different versions of that: calculated risk versus like I don't care risk or whatever, but. I think the idea of not being afraid to take risks and some of the things that we might highlight on this show will sort of help explain that maybe. Everybody takes risks, and people are often scared to take risks, and so then they don't do anything. But you will see some people on this podcast that will make you think about what it means to take a risk and the reward that can come from taking a risk, right? How you work through that, how you move through that is really tremendous, right? And some of the people that may be on this podcast, you'll see that they took great risk to get where they are, and all of the kind of cool things that have happened in your own individual life, you probably took a little bit of risk with.
Sure.
So our goal in this is to, again, we're talking about this collectiveness in these communities that we're in. We see it every day. We see it in meetings we sit in, calls we're on, our local people in each of our offices telling us stories. There's so much connectivity across so many different spaces and what's happening in people's lives. And we just want to get the stories out there. Like, I've heard firsthand choices somebody made, for the better or not, and sometimes they're very calculated and reserved and they take their time, and sometimes they just jump off the bridge, right, Mark? They do. Yeah. And I even do it in things that I do. Mm-hmm. So I think just getting to hear from these different people in these communities, choices they made, how they impacted their life for the better or not, because we all have done that. We've all done that.
As I meet with business owners every day, I'm always interested in their journey, right? Mm-hmm. What can I learn from what they did or didn't do? And then how can I replicate that in my life or help the next client with, hey, I got an idea here. This guy did this. Maybe that would work for you. I tell the younger salespeople, right? One of the first things I always ask is, how's business, right? I want to know, what are our struggles today, right? And what are the good things that are happening with my clients? And then I kind of, at the end of the day, I look at those and say, okay, well, how many were employee issues, and how many were our sales are down issues, and how many were governmental issues that they had to deal with that, and kind of just take my own little informal poll every day of what the struggles are for business owners.
You talked about being interested in how people kind of got where they're at. I'm reminded of one of my very first clients in this business. And if he listens to this, he's going to maybe know it's him. But he tells the story because I asked one day, I was like, how did you get to this point, right? Yeah, he's got this great retail operation, and it's very successful. And now he's sort of kind of half retired, and this daughter and son-in-law are taking over the business. And he says, when I was in college, I started as a janitor for the business. He just came in and he swept up the back room and the stock room and the front areas, and he did that for a while, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'd like to maybe get on the sales floor. So the owner let him out on the sales floor, and he started doing a little bit of that, and he did delivery, and so he worked all of his way through this whole journey, and then one day had the opportunity to buy the business. So, he took the risk to buy it. He took the risk to ask the question, to be on the sales floor, and and start, kind of doing that part of the business. And then he expanded to 3 different communities and was wildly successful. And you just talk about being interested in that story. I mean, and you look at it and you go, okay, from sweeping the floors to, now having a very successful business, semi-retired, passing it to the next generation. There's hundreds and thousands of stories across the state of Kansas that are just like that.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever going to know them. Now we can highlight a few of them, and I think these are really cool stories to share with people.
It'll be interesting to as we go down this journey. I wonder if part of my inquisitiveness doesn't come from my grandfathers being business owners. I watched them both struggle so much with how to build a business, and it was retail. Both of them were, but the things they do, right? I've joked since we've moved into our new office space in Salina. We're above a retail location, right? I don't park in front of the retail store because my grandfathers taught me, don't take that spot, right? Somebody might want to go into the bookstore. I think I saw them struggle so hard with how to get these businesses off the ground and how they took huge risks. And then were so conservative after that to make sure that they succeeded, right? As they pinched pennies, and I heard stories, and I knew how hard they worked for every little scrap so they could make their business successful.
Yeah.
Well, so just even touching in on that, you told the story of one of your very first clients and his success in making that journey. Like, there were things in his background, in his life, in his raising that made him make those decisions to take bigger risks, right? And I can connect to that. Like, I came from a family where we had our own business. It was a greyhound farm, completely out there in left field, right? But like, I watched my parents just bust their butts, right, to keep things going, and they became extremely successful at it. But that made me understand work ethic. It made me understand what risk looked like. And, I always think about that just as a parent. Like, I consistently tell my kids, I want you to go to college. I want you to do, there's a layer of how life's supposed to flow for a person, right? Okay, but at the end of the day, being willing to ask questions, being willing to take risks, being willing to put in the work will get you further than any degree you've gotten. Mm-hmm. And the worst thing you're ever going to hear is no, right?
Right.
And you just go ask again until you get where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
And it's all a risk. It's all a risk. But I took the risks I have. I'm sitting as the marketing director at Iron Insurance Partners. Never thought that would be where I would be as a life. But like, I get up every day, I'm like, this is great. This is fun. I enjoy it. Insurance is so fun, right? But how do I market insurance? But we do it by talking about things that we actually are passionate about, because insurance is just a piece of a bigger puzzle.
Sure. Right. I think there's part of me that loves talking to business owners so much because I'm actually jealous of the risk that they took. And while I'm an owner of Iron Insurance, I don't view that what I did was extremely risky. Not like hanging out the shingle, right? Not like my grandfather starting a bowling alley from scratch. Mm-hmm. That seemed risky. Me buying an Iron Insurance doesn't seem that risky, right? So I think part of my intrigue with business owners is the risk that they took, because I'm jealous that I didn't.
Yeah, well, and there's just some really unique stories about what they've done.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't seem, this is an established business, and you buy and become a partner. It's like, well, it's not as risky as some of the other things that people have done. You mentioned this idea of hearing no, right? And I think that's what is fearful for a lot of people. I've always been the opposite of it. I always figured that the more no's I got, the closer to the yes I got, right? Yeah. And so, when you talk about the risk of hearing no, it doesn't function in my mind that way, right? And I don't think it functions that way in a lot of people's mind when you look at successful entrepreneurs. And I think what you'll find is that they also feel the same way. They're like, okay, the more I hear a no, the quicker to the yes I'm going to get. but they're also, not afraid to hear the no and willing to accept the fact that they will fail multiple times before they get to that point of success.
So I think a lot of our goal was to make risk real. It's not a line item. It's not a safety guy in a hard hat. It's a real life thing happening. It's a farmer getting up in the morning and trusting that the weather didn't ruin the crop, right? It's the mom getting up in the morning and praying that their kid comes home from school, right? Like, there's so many complexities and so many layers to how risk shows up, not just in our own decisions, but in the decisions of our community leaders, in the decisions of a rogue criminal, in the decisions of somebody doesn't feel like looking up from their phone when they're driving. There's so many different layers of each person's risk tolerance, decision-making process that impact us each as human beings.
Goes back to what Mark was saying about his grandparents. I mean, all of these things that we see as human beings, right? We watch our parents do, we watch our grandparents do. We see that there are small risks and large risks that they take all throughout our life. And it continues to shape who we are as people. And then we shape our kids through those experiences. And it just continues and continues on. Risk is real because it is an everyday part of our life. And it shapes who we are, good, bad, and indifferent. I mean, it really does.
Yeah.
She listed all those risks, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can get scared, right? But if we lived in a bubble, that wouldn't be a life worth living.
No.
Right?
No, absolutely not.
So I think trying to take on the risk is what makes the life worth living, right?
So much so, and I sometimes regret the risks I haven't taken. Like, I think about it and go, so my 16-year-old, he's got a motorcycle. And everybody's like, you're an insurance guy and you let your son have a motorcycle. I'm like,
Because you wanted one.
Because I won't do it myself, right? Like, I'm too scared to ride one. I'm too scared to do it, right? My parents were too scared to let me do it. Right? Is there a safe way to do it? Yeah, he wears a helmet. He has the protective gear. He's smart. He's paying attention, right? And guess what? He's having a lot of fun in the back of that motorcycle, right? And in some regards, I'm a little envious.
Right.
You're like, oh man. So I didn't play football growing up. Parents didn't want to play football. I let my kids play football. They're having the times of their lives, right? There's risk in that. There's risk of getting hurt. We've already torn one knee, we've had broken elbows, but the experience that they're getting to have on the field with their friends, and when they walk off after a really hard game and there's a satisfaction that they've completed something, it's really what it's all about. And so
Okay, but I'm still not jumping out of an airplane.
I'm still not doing that either. I agree.
Fair. That's fair. What's our why for this?
Yeah, so for me, when we talk about doing this podcast and why it matters, I think it comes out of our core values, right? I mean, one of our most important core values, and they're all important, but one that I really key in on a lot always is the growth mindset, right? And I think that this particular podcast and what we're talking about with this idea of risk and what that risk looks like and what the journey through risk looks like, and on the other end of that, what comes out of it is about growth, is about having a growth mindset. And this is, as for an organization like ours, this is a risk to do a podcast, right? I mean, nobody could watch it. Lots of people could watch it. It could be somewhere in the middle. But if we don't take that risk, then the potential of the reward we get from this won't be there. And for me, the reward would be for lots of people to tune in and enjoy hearing from people that are like us, that have taken risk to get where they are today and have enjoyed the success and the journey of that risk, not without frustration, not without some pain, not without, all of that. is a part of that journey, and to highlight that journey of people in our communities all across the state of Kansas was really exciting, because community matters to us as well. And so being able to key in on some of those folks in our communities from all across the state of Kansas, I think is going to be really cool. And people are why this matters, and people are what matters to us as an insurance agency. So
Both our people as employees and customers.
and our clients, absolutely. Well, the world is a big, big place. The state of Kansas is a big place. The technology that we have today, the ability to do this podcast, brings it together. It shrinks it down. And while our communities are stretched out 300-400 miles away from each other, this will create a common thread that sort of, brings it all together in a unique way. With this platform, with the way the technology is, we're I think able to be in a position to create some of that education to the rest of the world, of people that may not have heard the story of whoever we might have on. And I think that, when we go back to this idea of risk and it being a negative connotation, people love safety. They love complacency, right? They're like, listen, I'm in my safe space and this is comfortable and I don't want to venture out. My hope for this is that we inspire people that are watching this or listening to this, by the guests that we have, to go out and do something that maybe they have not done yet, right? Or that they may have wanted to do, but are not doing it. It's like, go do it. Take the risk, right? Now you got to maybe do it the right way, right?
Sure.
But take the risk. And I think that in the grand scheme of things makes the world a better place. And I think that we can do it in our very small way with our Calculated Collective podcast.